Well, it's so good to be able to speak this morning. I always look forward to this opportunity. Over the week, I've been thinking about my crest a lot. I thought about the people we served. I thought about the conversations we had with people, the meals we cooked together, and just all of the good that we did. I love doing things like that. And especially when we do it together as a church, it's just awesome. And the times where I've had the most fun in my life is where I'm serving people with my brothers and sisters. Nothing has ever come close to that. And that's not to say that serving comes easy. Serving has a lot of challenges. A lot of sacrifice that has to take place. Sacrifice of your time, your energy, your sleep. And with all of the sacrifice that needs to happen, it's easy to think, why am I doing this, right? Am I really making a difference? Or is this all for nothing? And I think the danger of that thinking can lead us to not serve at all. I know of stories like that. And a verse that I kept thinking through the week was Galatians chapter 6, verse 9. And I think it's worth memorizing for all of us. And as I was thinking about it, I thought, wow, that'd be a good sermon when I have to fill in for Jared. So that's what I'm preaching this morning. It's Galatians chapter 6, verse 9. And I want it to be an encouragement for all of us to continue to do good things. Because we've been created to do good works. Galatians chapter 6, verse 9. Let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due time we will reap if we do not grow weary. You see, as disciples of Jesus, having a heart for good, for doing good things, is a part of who we are. There should be nothing unusual about that. There should be nothing random about that. It should be constant of doing good things for people. Having a heart for doing good is our life. We love our neighbor, we pray for the sick, we feed the hungry, we love the homeless, because you're a disciple of Jesus. And we should be filled with these good works. Like so many of the people that you read about in the Bible all the time. For some, like in Acts chapter 9, a woman named Tabitha, where the Bible says that Tabitha was abounding with deeds of kindness and charity. I want to be known for someone like that. Someone who's abounding in good deeds and charity. But I want to be known for that, not because of Tabitha, but because that's who Jesus Christ was. Jesus was that. Jesus was and I want my whole life to reflect him. I want to be like him. In Acts chapter 10, Peter says that Jesus went about doing good. And that's exactly what he did. Through all of the gospel readings, Jesus' life was doing good. And if we are truly becoming like Jesus, then the same should be said about us. That someone would say, you went about doing good. The heart of Jesus should rule in our life. And I just find it so interesting in this verse, in Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, how Paul says, do not lose heart in doing good. Don't lose heart, he says. And I think, well, why would we lose heart in doing good? Why would we stop that? That's a great thing. And I think for some reasons, the ones I stated in the introduction, but also I think a part is in the same verse, in verse 9. Where it says, for in due time we will reap. And I think the important words in that is the due time. Because it doesn't say that you're going to reap on our time, right? Which we would love for that to happen. We'd want that to happen. And I think that's when we can begin to lose heart. Because when you don't see the growth, when you don't see the fruit of your labor, then what does that look like to all of you? It looks like a failure. It looks like all the time you put in, all of the energy, didn't amount up to anything, right? And it can be discouraging. But we have to understand that our success does not depend on what we can see. It depends on what we do, what God has asked for us to do. That's what it's on. If we did what God has asked for us to do, we win every time. And we should never lose heart in that. And what is it that we are to do? And man, this is so simple that you're going to freak out. I'm telling you. And that is the cast seed. It's a famous parable through the Gospels that Jesus tells pretty much everywhere he goes. He tells us the parable of the sower. And I'm going to read it out of Mark chapter 4. In verse 4, he says this. He said, some of the seed fell beside the road, and the birds came and ate it up. Well, there goes that seed. And then he says, other seed fell on the rocky ground where it did not have much soil. It immediately sprang up because it had no depth of soil. Well, there goes that seed, right? And then other seed fell among the thorns, and the thorns came and choked it, and it yielded no crop. Oh, man, nothing's working here. But look at this one. Other seed fell into the good soil, and as they grew up, increased, and yielded a crop and produced 30, 60, and 100-fold. See, not all the seed made it. In fact, more withered away than it produced. But it's not an excuse to give up casting seed altogether. Because if you notice, some produced, and when they did, they brought more along with it. And that's what we're after. That's what we want. It's right there. And that's what you do every time that you serve someone else. You do that. You cast a seed in their life. It reminds me of a story. This last summer, one of my friends from the Saginaw church, we wanted to do something to cast seed. Try to get the word out there, and we tried to take advantage of the Saginaw Fair, and we set up a booth there, and we were just passing water bottles out to people. 90-degree day, who doesn't want a free bottle of water? And it made a great way to make conversations with people, and we had a lot of conversations, and actually it went better than we thought it would go, honestly. It went really well. But one of the vendors that we were working with right across from us was a lady selling Tupperware. And she had so much Tupperware. It was ridiculous how much Tupperware this lady had. It was nuts. Well, anyway, being right across from her gave us an opportunity to, get to know her and serve her, have conversations. And we did that. And there was an opportunity where she needed help carrying bags of ice from her truck to her spot. And I did that. Or there was an opportunity where my friend went and bought her a hot dog from the fair, or one of those big old elephant ears, right? They're just amazing. And through the week, we got to know each other really well. And I remember this, it's so clear. The last day, we're packing all our stuff up and getting ready to leave, right? And then she comes up to us right before we could leave, and she says, I just want to say I've been at this fair for over 20 years selling Tupperware. And I've never met a group of people who've treated me in the way that you have. And I was like, that was almost too much for me to hear, because over something that was so easy of carrying a bag of ice or buying a hot dog for someone made someone feel like that, right? And I think, well, how easy is that for us to do, right? That's so easy. All of us can do that, right? Those are the things that we can do every day that are right before us, or things like that. And to watch her face light up is an awesome feeling. I'm addicted to that. I'm addicted to seeing that. And I think that's exactly what we did at the Week of My Crest here, is that we made people feel extraordinary. And that's a whole nother lesson all to itself. And we planted many seeds into the lives of people. I think we definitely did that by the food we cooked. I didn't cook it, I just ate it. But the food, I mean, we have the best cooks in the state of Michigan. I'm convinced of that. Yeah, amen. And I mean, everyone was talking about how good it was. And, we would sit with them and we would have conversations with people. And I mean, there was this one night we had like ribs and pulled pork. I've never had those two together before. That was amazing. And, I would sit with them and have dinner with them, get to know them. And I tried to meet everybody. But I got really attached to one young man in particular, and he's actually here today. I didn't think he was going to be here. He's my buddy. His name's Kyle, and Kyle is quite the artist. He's really good, and I asked for him to draw me a picture, and he started drawing me a picture of a rack of ribs, and I thought, wow, you know my heart, brother. You know how to get there. And I guess it didn't. It got destroyed somehow, and so on the last day, he came up to me. He's like, "Well, I'll draw you. I'll draw you something else." It's like, "All right, what are you gonna draw me?" He said, "I want to draw you." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool, And so he drew me, and I actually brought the picture in, and I look at that. Isn't that amazing? I know I'm so handsome. Look at that. So that's amazing. Copies can be made if you want one. But I mean that is. It's so. It really touches me. Because he wrote on there, "Remember me." Yeah, and I will. I always will. And I think, that's just another seed planted in someone's life, right here. And that's what we're all after. That's what we should be doing. Is the most simplest things like that can mean so much to somebody. I'm also kind of blown away by all of the volunteers we had. It seemed like some never left the building. They were here all the time, in the morning and through the night. And not because they had to, but they wanted to. They wanted to be here. Or some came here before they went to work, which that's incredible because you never want to get up earlier than you have to, right? And some did that. Or some came after work, which that's another thing too. I mean, after work, you just want to go to bed. And they came here and started serving people. Or some even made it their vacation from work so they could be here. Which that's just mind-blowing to me that you would do something like that. Because when I think of vacation, I never thought, well, I'm going to take a week to serve. It says a lot about you. It says a lot about your heart. And it's such an example to me of that's the heart of Jesus right there. That's the heart of Jesus. And I thank you for that example to me and to this church. And throughout the week, I was at the Saginaw Fair, and in the week here of McCrest, I would hear people say, people just don't do this. They don't do this kind of stuff for us. And I kind of thought to myself, yeah, that's true. That's true. But disciples of Jesus do. And that makes the difference. Disciples of Jesus than the crowds, right? And I think how Jesus makes a distinction of the people of the crowds and his disciples. And how his disciples did things differently. They didn't talk the same, they didn't act the same. And that should be the same way for us. That we are looked at differently, that we're not the same. We don't talk the same, we don't act the same, we do things differently. And that's what we do as disciples of Jesus Christ. And so now what? The seeds were passed out. How will the seeds grow, right? That's the question. How will they grow? Well, there's a great verse in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 6. I think it says it all. And Paul says, I planted, Apollos watered, but God was causing the growth. It's a great verse. And Paul uses that illustration to show, his role and Apollos' role of reaching the city of Corinth, right? That's plant and watering. That's what they do. And God does the rest. We leave the rest up to him. And that's the same way for us. We plant and water, and God will give the increase. And that's so important for us to understand, because if you don't plant and water, if we don't do that as a church, then what is there for God to give the increase to? There's nothing. God can't give an increase to if we haven't done our part of the job. So we must continue to plant. We must continue to water so that God can give increase, and he will. And in so doing our job and planting and watering, Paul says we will reap. You see that? We will reap. It's with certainty. There's not a question mark at the end of the verse. This is what's going to happen when God's people do this. They're going to reap. I will make sure there's a reaping. We have to believe that God's words will not return to him without accomplishing what he desires. You got to believe that. But the reaping is conditional on our end. And that is if we do not grow weary, if we do not lose heart, right? See, we can't give up. We can't give up of being disciples of Jesus, of who we are, of bearing that fruit that Jesus says we are to do. And here's the thing. You may not see all the seeds grow, but the important thing is that they do grow. That they do grow. And I think that's exactly what happened to me in my life. At such a very young age, my wonderful great-grandmother, she would always give me some type of lesson. She would read me the Bible, tell the story of Noah. And it was always over when we were playing Yahtzee. You guys play Yahtzee? I love that game. Yahtzee's amazing. And Grandma, I could never beat Grandma at it. She was tough. And that's why I'm so competitive now, because Grandma got that out of me, playing that. And I remember this one time where Grandma got a Yahtzee in one roll. I was like, how am I supposed to compete with this? Grandma was amazing. And by her example, I mean, it meant everything to me in my life. And it's why I'm here. It's why I'm a faithful Christian. Because without that, there's just no way. I didn't have that childhood growing up in church. But you see, it took years afterwards for Grandma to see the fruit of her labor. She saw that. And God certainly gave the increase. Certainly gave the increase. And I just wonder how many people have that same story. Or how many conversations that you've had with people, how many people that you might have served, that maybe, you haven't seen them again, and maybe years down the road, it changed their life, and you may never know it. It's incredible. So we can't lose sight of that. We can never lose sight of that. You see, if Jesus didn't grow weary on us, if he didn't lose heart in doing good, then we have no right to lose heart in doing good for him. See that? And I think how easy it must have been for Jesus to grow weary, to lose heart in his life. And how frustrated he clearly must have been at the disciples for, like, come on, you guys should know this by now. You guys should know this by now. Or when he's carrying the cross up to his death and thinking to himself, man, is everyone going to believe in me? He knows not everyone's going to get it. But he still goes through with it. Aren't you glad that he never lost heart for what he was doing? Amen. We can't lose heart. I'd like to charge you with the words of the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 58. 1 Corinthians 15:58. And Paul says it's so good right here. He says, therefore, my beloved brethren, Be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your toil is not in vain in the Lord. You see that? All of our work that we do, it's not in vain. It's not in vain. There's no such thing as wasted time when we work for Him. There's no such thing as wasted hours or energy or money when all of our purpose is for the glory of God. There is no waste in that. And I think if we get what Jesus has done for us, then we will have so much passion to want to do these things, to want to serve people, to want to do these good things, right? And that Paul says, for the love of Christ controls me, or the love of Christ compels me to do those things. We should be the same. That the love of Jesus should compel us to do those things. And perhaps, maybe none of this makes sense to some of you. You know, helping the poor, the homeless, the sick. And if it doesn't, perhaps you haven't developed a true appreciation to what Jesus has done for you. I know I was in that boat. I would never do these type of things for people. But when you really get what Jesus has done for you, what will you not do for other people? I talked that this morning with forgiveness. When you get how much God has forgiven you, man, you're going to do that for other people. And how you serve other people shows your appreciation to what Jesus has done for you. It shows that. Matthew chapter 9, verse 37 and 38. And Jesus said to his disciples, that's all of you, said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest. You see, the Lord is looking for workers to go out, to work for him. And my question is, will you be one of them? Will you continue to be one of them, right? And the harvest field is not far away from us. You don't have to get on a plane to go somewhere else. All you got to do is walk out the doors and you're in it. You're in it. And so my encouragement is to take all the opportunities you have on a daily basis, at school, at work, to plant seeds, to serve people. And then the next time that we do it as a church, that we all do it together, serving this community. There's work to be done. So let's go to work. Let's go to the harvest field. I love all of you. If there's any need that you may have or any prayers, would you come now as we together stand and sing? Brother Bruce.